Alrighty, so this is my second take doing this because I want to do it a little bit faster, and I think that I may have messed up on something. So anyway, let's go ahead and talk about patch notes that I would like to see come to the PTS. I may be talking a little too fast. Patch notes I'd like to see come to the PTS to be tested for 2 weeks. 2 more. I'd like to see it no longer give 40 magical power. Instead, I'd like you to start with 15 stacks and make it so that it gives 2.8 magical power per stack, up from 2. Currently, this item is supposed to be risk and reward, but with it being cost efficient at 15 or so stacks, there's not much risk or reward with the item unless you're really beating the mid lane down. So I'd like to see it start with the 15 stacks. So you'd start with 42 power, 2 more than you had have before, but then you would, if you die immediately, you would lose most of your stacks. Instead of making it 100 like some people suggested, I think that's a little insane. I just would like to see it nerfed a little bit, or a lot, to a point to where if you're doing good, then you're fine. If you're doing bad, then you probably shouldn't be buying this item. Wind Demon. I think that this item is completely useless, and I would like to have it changed. Instead of making it where your critical hits reduce their healing, I'd like to see it so that it makes your critical hits put a debuff on the target that siphons 50% of the healing they receive to you for 3 seconds, 4 seconds, 5 seconds, whatever. Basically, every time they lifesteal, you get healed for 50% of the healing they get. Plus, if you crit anyway, plus if they get healed by an ally, if they get healed by meditation, pots ticking, HP 5, all of that would come to you for 3 seconds instead of to them. I like it. Would it work? Who knows? That's what testing's for. Shifter Shield seems like a very weak item currently. No one builds it that I know of. The protections are not high enough to warrant. The 60 power is not strong enough to warrant the cost. So I'd like to see the cost reduced to about 200. And I'd like to see the base protections increased a little bit, and maybe the base damage increased. Bloodforge and Devourer's Gauntlet is are two items that are very similar in what they do, but not in the way that they do it. So Bloodforge currently, you have to hit 3 times to get max benefit. Devourer's Gloves, you have to stack up to 75 times to get max benefit. So Bloodforge is much earlier, is good to pick up early if you're ahead. But that's it. It has no other purpose. It is statistically weaker than Devo's Gloves fully stacked in every way, even though it gives the same benefits, because you technically do get 1% less healing, which isn't that big of a deal, but it is. So what I would like to see is a little bit different change to each of the items. I would like to see Bloodforge gain 10 penetration to make it more of a attack version of the item, so that you're going to want to be doing more damage overall. Whereas Devourer's Gauntlets, I'd like to see it just get an increase of 5% to up to 15% from 10 lifesteal, so that it's more of a sustain item, whereas Bloodforge is more of a damaging item that still do basically the same thing but slightly different. Ansile, I just like the old Ansile back. I don't know. Even then, it really wasn't that good, but I feel like the stacking health would be better now than this horrible passive that we have on it that no one builds. Not even Hercules' or Tears'? Yeah, sure. Moving on, Spear of the Magus. Just a little love, a little bit more power for the mana cost, or for the health, for the money, the cost of the item. No one's talking about building this item, but I still think it's very good. So it may not even warrant a buff, it just warrants people to need to think a little bit more than they are. Star Cutting Sword. I would like to just hunters not be able to buy this at all. Just no. Just no. People don't know how to read, so please just don't allow people to be stupid in my games. Runeforged Hammer. I'd like to see the power on this item increased to 40, up from 30. Not a big increase, just a little increase. Now, this item feels very weak. I wouldn't even mind seeing the passive increased a little bit, but who knows. The big problem with this item is it does extra damage based on your power and not on like the ability damage, which is what I think that it should do. But hey. Heartseeker. This item was something I was really excited about, but after seeing it and playing with it, it just doesn't feel very good. So my thought is a little change. Increase the cost by 200, maybe a little too much. Increase the physical power by 30 or to 35, up from 25. And make it so that the ability that you cast that gets the benefit from the additional power, the 40 power, make it so that that ability costs less mana. So it makes it kind of a good early game item where it's like really helping you with your mana. It's kind of like a mini chalk passive on the item at 5 stacks. It's very similar, actually. Notably, you wouldn't want to build this with chalk because that part would be completely and totally useless. Unless you have like 3 stacks. No, it'd just be useless. Breastplate of Valor, I'd like to see the cost increased by 200. Minor change. The next one being Rod of Healing and Rod of Syphilis. I'd like to see this item moved to the Glowing Emerald Tree. I'd like to see it no longer provide magical power. I'd like to see the health increased by 150. I'd like to see cooldown reduction put on this item. I'd like to see the aura boosted up to 25%. And I'd like to see the cost reduced. That's a lot of stuff. Before we talk about it though, Rod of Healing as well moved to the Glowing Emerald Tree. Magical power removed, of course. Give it 10% cooldown reduction and decrease the healing by... what was that? 100? 230? Just looking at it, not really paying attention to the actual numbers. So yeah, the reason for this is I feel like the item where it's at is not very good. Now some people might scream, but that god, Guan, Cupid, they'd be overpowered. Maybe. But Guan, you'll see later, not so much. So yeah, I feel like this would be a good change to the item. Because, like, no one builds it. Healers don't build it. No one builds it. Maybe if they just increase the aura, people would build it, but I think the reason for the aura increase is because it no longer has the magical power, so that mages won't scale with it. But yeah, it's something to test, right? Polynomicon, I like to see the power decrease slightly. Give it a slight gold reduction because you're decreasing the power. I'm okay with that. Bulwark of Hope, I'd like to see the passive reduced to 10 health per player level, down from 15. Now let's talk about God nerfs. This is all nerfs. They're not in order. I apologize. I didn't also include like what they currently are. I apologize for that. But just note that it's all a decrease in stuff. So Unstable Manifestation. I'd like to see this decreased from whatever it is down to 0.75% magical power. Yeah. And I would like to see... I put gains even though it's reduction, I believe. Great. Now I'm questioning myself. Smite Soul. God, I hate myself right now. Oh, hurry. Yes. Okay, it is a nerf. I had to make sure. So yeah, it's a slight nerf to her like early game power, or her power, but I still feel like that's okay and needed. Stellar Burst is also taking a slight hit. Nope, wrong ability. Yeah, it's taking a 5% hit at all levels. So not a big change, but a little bit of a change. That means she will technically do 10 less damage per hit, because it hits once and then it hits again. Geb's Stone Shield, I'd like to see it no longer cleanse CC. I'm okay with it having like a big heal or health mitigation, but I'm not okay with it having big health or adding health basically, and it also cleansing CC. That's just too much. They either need to reduce the amount of health that it gives, or they need to remove the CC to make it where he's just not just so silly. So silly. And I just scrolled way too far down. Guan Yu, Conviction. I'd like to see the cooldown of this ability increased to a scaling 16 to 12 or to a static 14. Those are my two options. I'd like to see the healing reduced. I'd like to see the healing reduced. I think it's 10 per pop. Man, I wish I'd have written these down now. So I'd like to see the healing reduced, and I'd like to see it give some scaling to healing. So if he builds power, he gets more healing that he can do, If he doesn't, then he doesn't. Yeah, he loses 10 power at all levels. Or 10 healing at all levels. Maybe more, but I feel like with the nerf to the cooldown, even if he builds full cooldown and he builds the changed version of Rod, that I still feel like he would be in like a similar spot, but he would have to build both items. So I feel like it would be better off overall. Neith. I feel like Neith does way too much damage with abilities and way too much damage with her auto attacks, even though she doesn't have a steroid. So I would like to see her damage decreased on her Spirit Arrow. That's her main damaging ability. I'd like to see the damage decrease, and I'd like to see the scaling decreased as well. Chiron. I'd like to see him no longer get the 3 physical protection, 3% physical protection reduction that he currently gets for whatever reason. Whenever he has a Mark of Masterful shot up. And I would like to see the slow reduced from 25 to 10, and I'd like to see the damage reduced by 5 at all ranks, and the power contribution reduced as well. Ao Kuang Wildstorm, I'd like to see this ability no longer count as a basic attack, or see the overall damage of the ability decreased. The problem with gods like Ao Kuang and Loki are their one-shot wonders, meaning that they really, in order to be like super efficient, they need to be able to kill someone instantly, and that's just not fun to play against. It's not fun to just immediately die, like because somebody hit you with 2 abilities. It's so silly. Like I miss Ao Kuang being like an auto attack character. Like that's when he was fun, and now he's just like, I'm a burst mage, and it's so not fun to play with. Emma. So I've done this change with 3 characters. Basically, the change is so that they have a lower passive of something, but then they have an increased passive when they use the ability. So with Emma, it's Divine Presence. Whenever she switches from her Benevolence into her Valor, or her Valor into her Benevolence, she has a lower base aura of 10%, but she has a higher, like popping a sprint almost, but it's a little bit lower than that. But so like instead of her having 25 or whatever it is right now, she would have 10% plus 4, 8, 12, 16, 20 whenever she uses the ability for 3 seconds, which is also the duration of the heal that she gets. Same thing with Valor, same change. I'd like to see the cooldown increase, but because the cooldowns were increased, I would like to also see the healing contribution increased on the heal. Like how much power she has to increase the heal. Because I feel like if you're going to give her one, you need to give her the other so that she can still remain viable. Vamana, I would like to see his movement speed increase because big babies don't need to move that fast if they can hit that wide. And I would like to see Armored Umbrella nerfed slightly with how much damage it can do and the amount of scaling that it has. It's really insane. Loki, I would like to see him no longer have the 25% damage reduction when he's cloaked. I feel like if you hit him while he's stealthed, I feel like you should just hit him. Like, I don't feel like he needs damage reduction. And I would like to see decoys destroy after 1 or 2 hits from a tower. I think that split push Loki is one of the most, like, it's so infuriating to play against. Like, it's not fun. No one wants to play against a Loki. His teammates don't want to play with him because he's Loki. And everyone hates Loki except Loki players. He's just not a fun god. So I'd like to see his decoys just immediately destroyed, or maybe destroyed after 2 hits of a tower. Because in all honesty, he shouldn't be doing it. Kind of like Bastette's cats almost. But I feel like because she has to use an ultimate in order to do it, whereas he's just using a decoy. I'd also like to see maybe, just for testing purposes, have it so that decoy does the same amount of damage when it explodes, except have it so that it does it in a pulsing tick. So that like he throws it down and he runs through it. If somebody's chasing him, they have to walk through it, so they have to take damage while it's doing that. And I think it'd be cool because if he builds anti-healing, it could give anti-healing in an area instead of a single target, and just kind of give him a little bit more of a team fight presence. Capri, I'd like to see this ability, Scarab's Blessing, no longer give movement speed. Not a big change. I mean, it is, but it isn't like gonna stop him from being super good. And I'd like to see Rising Dawn's width decrease slightly, so that the area is not as big. And I'd like to see the damage decreased a little bit, but a little bit higher scaling, so that if he does build some magical power, it does more damage, but not stupid amounts of damage. Ravana, I'd like to see the ability of his Prana Onslaught increased to 8 seconds, and I'd like to see the damage and power taken down, power contribution taken down. Sol, I'd like to see Stellar Burst slightly reduced in damage. It's just 5 off of each tick. And I'd like to see her disapparate? I'd like to see the movement speed decreased a little bit. Isis, I'd like her magical contribution to be decreased from 40 to 35%. So a little bit weaker. And I'd like to see the max damage, or the damage on a max damage Spirit Ball decrease from 2.5 to 1.25. 1.5 to 1.25. Kronos, I'd like to see his scaling on his Time Rift do slightly less. And I'd like to see stop time have a 25% with decrease. Kind of similar to Capri. Alright, and moving on to Tyr. I'd like to see him get a same treatment as Amma. I don't think this would necessarily help him, or not help him, but hurt him any. I mean, it would, but it wouldn't be as big as I would hope. Because he does way too much damage. He's way too tanky. He has way too much CC. Anyway, so basically similar to Amma, he has a base of 20 damage when installed, or 20 power. And then when he switches from defense to assault, he gains 40. So he gets slightly more overall while he has this active. So when he first switches, so he switches and then he combos. But if he's just sitting in red stance, he's only going to have 20. And then when he switches to tank, he'll have 60 for 3 seconds. So just a simple change. I don't know how much it would affect it, but yeah. So Musakab, obviously my favorite hunter to play, is very weak. There's been many thoughts of ways to make it so that he's not as weak, but this is the one I've came up with. So I'd like to see the healing increased on his hives. And I want to change something just real quick. Okay. I would like to see the cooldown of his hives decreased to 12 seconds. I'd like to see the hives take 1-1-1-2-2 hits. So that's per level 1 every... Anyway. Basically, this means at max level or at level 4, he will take... it'll take 2 hits to kill his hives. Now, I'd like to also see the movement speed on his hives change. Instead of giving him the passive percentage that they give him currently, I'd like to see it so that they give him a lower passive, and then whenever he places a hive for 4 seconds or 2 seconds or whatever, he gets a boost of speed, kind of like a mini sprint that he gets, which would stack with sprint. So like, because he doesn't have a movement speed increase, right? I mean, he doesn't have a escape. So this gives him the ability to run like hell. If your team's warding properly, you should hopefully be able to pop sprint, pop this, and just get out. You should be the quickest bee alive. Will it help? I don't know. But hey, it's worth testing. I'd also like the passive meter, or him to have a passive meter that shows how many hives he has. I'd like some quality of life changes, really. Be able to see like an actual kind of outline of a hive to see like where exactly they are, instead of having to look at your little buff icon and guess about where it's at. Little minor changes. It'd be cool if also honey would, like, when you go to hover, if it would like glow a slightly different color so that you can see that when you run your hive over it, it'll ignite it, basically. Little minor changes that I would like to see. Cupid, these are buffs, by the way. Cupid, Flutter, this ability no longer gives attack speed. RIP, attack speed. Maybe they add something else to it, would be cool, but it no longer gives attack speed, that's all I care about. Instead, Share the Love now gives Cupid attack speed for 6 seconds, maybe a little too long, maybe 4 seconds, who knows. But basically, like, he throws his hearts down, he gets inspired by giving out love that he attacks faster. I don't know. Makes sense to me. Ratatasker, I don't really have any good changes for him. I think he just is a bad design, personally. Because he's either overpowered or not. He's pretty similar to Ao Kuang. But I'd like to see some changes. I'd like to see him get 25% damage reduction when he charges his ultimate. So that way, if like he's being bursted down, he has a chance to actually escape. And I'd like to see Blue Acorn and Sapphire and Emerald Acorn get just 200 health, just to make those a little bit more interesting and viable. And that's it. That's all of the I wish these were patch notes that we would see. Nothing major, nothing too bad, but I would hope maybe some of these would help some characters out. Maybe they'd break some characters. Who knows? That's what testing's for. But I'd like to see them stay on the PTS long enough and actually see changes happen instead of, well, we're going to test this out. Well, we're just going to ship it. Because Ragin... I didn't even touch Ragin. Because Ragin is just broken. And I'd rather wait and see what they actually do instead of, like, giving advice or what I think should be done. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day. And let me know what you think down in the comments down below.